JD Conway, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. We were talking in the pre-interview. We've known each other for a long time, and we've interacted both in person, but also virtually in a variety of capacities over the last, 18 months or so. But we've never really had the chance to sit down and talk shop like this, like we're going to do today. And I'm excited for that. And not only because you're a super fascinating guy with lots of great insights, but you're also working for a really interesting company that's doing some really cool things. And so I think this will be a really great conversation and a good opportunity for listeners to become a little bit more exposed to not only you, but BambooHR and what you're trying to do. Today, we're going to be focusing on BambooHR. For those of you who aren't familiar with Bamboo, JD can talk a little bit about what Bamboo as a company does, but we're going to zoom in on the HR function more, and we're going to talk specifically about BambooHR's new talent acquisition model and its virtual cycle outputs. This is something that I know you're very proud of, JD, something that you've honed based on your past experience, as well as, your experience with Bamboo. And you guys are growing so crazy fast that you probably have had no choice but to figure out how to do this better, right? To facilitate your growth. So I think that's wonderful. As we get started, I wanted to share JD's bio with everybody. Driven by the simple yet powerful principle of treating people like people, JD Conway empowers executives and HR leaders to focus on the humanization of human capital. Drawing from over 15 years of experience, he is able to demonstrate how a people-first approach can dramatically improve organizational and employee well-being and the bottom line. Previously, JD worked at one of the largest recruiting firms in the world, where he serviced several Fortune 500 clients. More recently, he served in the function and formerly acted as HR generalist and technical talent acquisition partner and senior talent acquisition partner at a high-growth SaaS company, or various high-growth SaaS companies, rather. Currently, JD is the head of talent acquisition at BambooHR, where he is actively innovating the art of recruiting and retention as BambooHR has grown over 500% during his tenure. By redefining recruiting as a process engineering, JD encourages integrating recruiting into all other departments, so the life cycle of hiring and beyond becomes a seamless and efficient process. JD is on the Utah State SHRM Board of Directors and Forbes HR Leadership Council, where he continues to promote the essential role of HR and talent acquisition that they play in developing a people-first approach to organizational development. Amen to all of that. I share the same interests and passions. It's wonderful. I love your background. Before we dive on into the conversation, anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your personal background or context?
I guess I would say one quick update that I just realized ever since I sent you over the information, or those that sent it over to you. We're actually at a 600% increase since I joined, and so this is maybe just showing how fast things have changed and are increasing right now. Bamboo is at about 900 employees. I expect us to crest the 1,000 employees within the next few months, and we'll continue from there. There's quite a lot of market to be had, quite a lot of growth, quite a lot of impact and change to be had, and so it's a continued growth projection, and I'm really excited about it. So I guess that's the only major update is that we're at 600% growth since I've started there, and it's changed a lot this year, I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, and we can zoom in on that a little bit too. So that's incredible. It was only maybe 2 weeks ago when materials were sent over to me. So you went from 500 to 600% growth, just in a matter of a few weeks. Anyways, great.
I should have updated that a bit before. Yeah.
A great growth trajectory. Very, very good. Maybe if you wouldn't mind just taking a moment, because you're a fellow HR geek. Tell us a little bit just about how you got into HR. Now, people listening to this podcast, we have organizational leaders of all types and stripes. Some who are HR professionals, others who are just trying to figure out how to do the people stuff in their teams better. My experience is most people don't grow up as a little kid dreaming of becoming an HR person. They kind of find themselves in that role. That certainly is how it was for me. Like I was a zigzag path and eventually kind of found myself in it. And I'm glad I did, but it's not something that I like was drawn to immediately. Maybe that is the same for you. Maybe it's different. I don't know. Can you talk to that for just a moment?
No, that's absolutely the same kind of zigzag pathway that I trod at that time. So I'll say that my first exposure to everything was kind of adjacent to the industry itself. In the early 2000s, I worked for an executive outplacement firm, and so it was a lot more focused on the opposite side of helping executives make transitions into other executive areas, into other positions at other companies. And so, I was managing disc profiles, marketing materials, things like that. So I had some adjacent time and experience there. I took a hiatus for a little while. I came back into everything. My father had started a recruiting firm in 2007, and a third party recruiting firm, and I helped him put that together and kind of I helped him continue to work with that, and I was basically doing much of the candidate sourcing during my time there. Now, at the time, you may remember the market crashed pretty soon after that. And so we basically had to lay off, or he had to lay off most of the staff. Instead of a layoff, he said, "Hey, something's coming. I think you should quickly try to find another job." So then it was just he and I and another family member just trying to make sure the lights were staying on. We made a shift into mining, because that was the industry that was doing well. Precious metals was doing well when everything else was crashing at the time. And so they were one of the only groups that were hiring. So we decided to focus our efforts on specialty people there, but mill foremen, so on and so forth, engineers, and the like. And that's where I got the most exposure to it, but I didn't recognize just how much I liked it. Or, I had other people tell me, "Hey, you're good at this." And it really sunk home only about 8 years ago. Only in 2013 is when I said, "No, I really need to make the pivot back into recruiting." And as soon as I was starting to get into that, I recognized everything else in the world of HR, that there was so much need in the world of HR. There's so much need for innovation, so much need for change, and I didn't necessarily see a lot of that happening. I wanted to be part of it. So fast growing industry, I decided to beef up a little bit on my generalist side at the same time, but certainly focused on talent and talent acquisition and development there.
Well, that's super interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of someone's path to HR coming through precious metals. But that's awesome.
Well, and somehow it's one of those things where, in college, I was actually studying to be a professor. I was looking at Levantine studies and Assyriology, and a few years in, I was like, I've made a terrible mistake here. I do not belong here. And that's right around the same time that I started recognizing more of my abilities and more of my natural inclinations and love for hiring and good hiring and the way to treat candidates and the way to have the best hiring outcomes. One quick addition there. I love the aggregated economic impact of good employers. And this is something that my father and I talked about many years ago. He said, if you have company A and they're treating their employees extremely well, and company B who is not, as a third-party recruiter, you just plan to go after people at company B to try to help company A. And in an aggregated effect, if more people are doing that, you're propping up companies that do the right things by their employees, that take care of their employees, whatever, in all holistic senses of that, right? There's a lot of reasons why. So in a way, you're helping the market choose the winners, and the winners being those that prioritize their people. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Well, so talent acquisition, clearly, your early passion, your early connection, and over time, of course, you've been exposed to so many other areas of HR. But in your current role at Bamboo, well, actually, let's take a step back for just a moment. Describe a little bit about like the core offerings of what Bamboo does. And then let's zoom in. You've been trying to deal with the crazy growth at Bamboo. And so that's necessitated, honing the talent acquisition process. So then I'd love to dig into what your specific approach at Bamboo has been, what your model is, and we can dissect that.
That's great. That's great. Well, BambooHR, one of the reasons why I actually wanted to join Bamboo is I was originally a potential client, and not too many people know this, where in my last company, we were right in the right size. BambooHR we focus on small and medium-sized businesses. It's an area where not too many software solutions have focused on historically. And there's so many small businesses that can be impacted by ease of use, by better usability, by better engagement from employees with their HR software. So we started everything out as an HRIS focused and kind of did that land. We've become really well known as a industry leader in our sector and in our area. And now we're continuing to expand our product and product offering. We're becoming closer and closer to an all-in-one kind of solution, but again, geared towards small and medium-sized businesses, where we are trying to take all of the complexity that happens in these enterprise solutions, John. There's like, you look at so many of the other systems out there, and yes, they're customized for these massive organizations, but those at smaller companies really can't adapt to the beefy nature of the functionalities that are involved in enterprise software, or the cost. The cost barriers there are vast. So we've been able to take a lot of, and I gotta, tip my hat to the product team over here, being very deliberate in solving the problems and taking a massive amount of complexity and developing something that was really, really delightful to interact with. So one area of that for Bamboo as that, back to that potential client or customer area, I noticed right off the bat the ease of use. I was like, what is this? What is this beautiful user interface? I've never seen something like this in my recruiting and HR years, and that got me intrigued. Well, a few months later, they contacted me. We were still pretty small at that time, about 150, 140 employees, something like that, and they asked me to come on as their first technical recruiter dedicated to that, and their first recruiter that had some decent years behind him and everything. And I was able to work with Cassie Whitlock to help build the function, not completely from scratch, but pretty close, to really build the discipline of the function from there. So I hope that leads into it a little bit. I mean, our focus anywhere from payroll. We've just launched our payroll solutions. We have employee engagement tools, ENPS, and pulse surveys, time tracking, so on and so forth. There's so much to it. But what I would say is that Bamboo's overall goal is to be the #1 HR experience, John. It's not just the software. It's what else can we do to establish best practices and maybe work out the kinks ourselves and help other people on their organizations. Maybe we can educate them to help them lift the function overall and help them build better workplaces. So I've always been very engaged in how much the leadership at Bamboo cares about that. And that's one of the things that drew me in to begin with.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I share that passion and that goal to lift HR as a profession overall, because there are so many positive outcomes for organizations. Certainly the business case for good, strong HR is very clear in my mind. But the human case is equally compelling. Like I want people to have meaningful, fulfilling jobs where they can bring their whole authentic self to the workplace, where they can tap into their unique talents and abilities, continue to develop and grow themselves, their capabilities over time, and grow into themselves. And ultimately that's the kind of organization that's going to be innovative, and it's going to thrive, and people are going to love what they do, and it's just going to be a win-win-win all the way around. And so that's my goal. That's what I try to do in my consulting work and when at the university and in my research. And so we share that passion. And I love what Bamboo's doing. And as a local company here in Utah, it's been really fun to see the growth of Bamboo over the last several years.
And I love what you were just saying there. I mean, we're spending a third of our lives or more at this place, right? Like why can't we find ways to get the best out of everyone, and also them to have more fulfilling lives as a result? It just has such a great impact. And that's actually been a value focus at BambooHR of enjoy quality of life. Well, what you're doing here and how well you do it, and your relationships at work and the human side, as you said, has such a vast impact on the rest of your life that companies can focus more and more on doing that. And they have, it just has, like I said, an aggregated effect across business, across how we treat people. And maybe it sounds a little bit idealistic, but it's a worthy thing to push for. I love it.
Aspirational goals are a good thing.
Yeah.
So maybe it is. I'm an eternal optimist. I think it's good to shoot for the stars. So I definitely think most organizations can and should be doing HR better, more strategically, more people-centric organizations, and that's going to help everybody. That's going to help the bottom line, like you mentioned. It's going to help the people. So we need to really strive for that. Now let's zoom in now on Bamboo's new talent acquisition model. I know this is something you're really passionate about. I'm sure many listeners are trying to figure out, especially in this labor market today. Getting good people is a real challenge. It's so interesting because pre-pandemic, it was really hard to get good people. And then all of a sudden the pandemic happens and like unemployment goes crazy through the roof. Now still for really technically skilled people, it was still hard, but unemployment rates overall were high. But coming out of the pandemic again, we're struggling, like trying to get good people into the jobs to help our organization succeed. So talent acquisition is as important as it's ever been. Describe that model for us at Bamboo, and then what you mean by the virtuous cycle outputs of that model.
Yeah. Well, I just to add on to your commentary there, it's been such an interesting market, and it's interesting you mentioned that we're right here in Utah. We've had the top economy, I think, for the last few years running, and so many people moving here. But what we've seen and what's been interesting, and I would say this is the greatest catalyst for change in HR, is the shifting in the market, right? That everyone's talked about the baby boomer generation kind of retiring at this point, and you have less people in the labor force overall. You have a lot of adaptation and change, millennial generations and Gen Z generations wanting different things from their employers, or demanding sometimes different things. So the market has just caused this catalyst of change for organizations. And that's why I actually love what's happening. It's a tough market for hiring, but I love that it just puts a magnifying glass on what needs to change and allows for the innovation to happen that much faster. So at BambooHR, I noticed, let me preface this. I noticed things a long time ago, right? When you're in recruiting, so many people in talent acquisition start wondering, why can't we do this differently? Why are so many things broken? And John, there's actually a reason why there's such a high burnout rate in talent acquisition. People will go in and leave within 2 to 5 years. And other people will stay and remain. They'll be in management. They'll become a principal or a specialist in another area. But there is a very high burnout rate, and you have to examine why. Like, why is that the case? Well, in my opinion, there's an organizational problem with how companies value, structure, incentivize, and put the pieces of hiring and talent acquisition together. So I started to dig into this in a LinkedIn conference a long time ago, where I was talking to, I'll hold back the name of the company, but it was a well-known and fast-growing, they're very well-known now, B2C entertainment company. And I was talking to a recruiter from there. It's just kind of prodding as their structure. And as I really started to get into it, I said, okay, help me understand. So you have people doing sourcing, right? You have people doing the coordination, the scheduling, the handling little things here and there, and just kind of making the pieces move. You have recruiters do these pieces. And as I kept asking these questions that I was curious about and probing into it, my conclusion with him, and I didn't say it this bluntly, was, wait a minute. So you're saying that at your organization, basically uncovered that recruiters were kind of like glorified phone screeners, right? And this is so often the case, that the function has not been able to adapt to the market needs fast enough because nobody seems to be able to, or nobody seems to be driving to solve the problem. We just do the same things over and over again. So in kind of uncovering that, and I didn't say it that way, but he was a little bit shocked. And it kind of was like, yeah, I mean, I guess all I'm doing is phone screens. My push on this is very often recruiters can feel, or talent acquisition pros can feel like a highly paid admin, because you're shuffling, right? You're shuffling so many different things and moving pieces. You can't do anything at quality. And as a result, you have bad candidate experiences, back to the people side. You have candidates that never hear back, right? We never hear back from a job posting, or never understand to get feedback why I wasn't chosen. So these problems that continue to be a demand for candidates in the marketplace and are very human centric, we can try to make changes there, but we have to switch how we view the model. So that's that whole premise and idea. And as you start looking at the functions themselves in talent acquisition, there's so many things that need to happen in the selection process. There's a lot of areas to cover in holistic choice, basically bias training, so on and so forth, that needs to happen. It needs to be really in concert with hiring managers. So with that being said, I'll say I call normal recruiting functions kind of a vertical model where you have these heavy silos. You'll talk to a sourcer and they're just spamming people with messages. When you really talk to them and uncover, okay, how do you really feel? Very often they could just feel like they're spamming people with LinkedIn messages or whatever area on a regular basis. Not to say that, they don't do it very well or whatnot, but there's a limited amount of impact to the organization, impact to the candidate, and actually having some type of input in the process. So what we've done at Bamboo is we've flipped it. And instead of having one recruiter that has a sourcer sending out messages all the time and coordinators just scheduling all day, and then them doing phone calls all day, and then maybe coming in at the end for an offer letter, things like that. And every company organizes it differently. This is just a common model. We've truncated the amount of positions that a talent acquisition partner will work on. So that way they can cover a much more full breadth of the process, including we've expanded the functions. So all of the talent acquisition partners at BambooHR are in charge of their own, either working with our marketing team or developing their own recruitment marketing. We dive into candidate persona analysis so we can save time by targeting the right areas, right? Who is my, you could say, John, you could say, who's my user? Who really wants this job and how do I go find them, rather than, blasting the world and having a million applicants that you can't take care of. We're a lot more deliberate and strategic in that way. Other functions that we add to are there's a lot more thought of acting like a process engineer for each position for optimization, rather than just, this is the process, this is how we've done it every time. No, the focus is you should be able to adapt every time to the market demands, right? To your persona groups, right? To your hiring manager's needs, to the skills that you're trying to assess. And then there's even HRBP functions and program management functions. Now this seems like a lot to handle, but again, if you truncate the amount of requisitions, you're able to get somebody that has much more ownership, much more impact. And the retention on our team is, I think, the most poignant thing to look at. We haven't had, so there's I think 18 on our team right now in talent acquisition. And we've had one person leave in the 6 years I've been there. And they left after 3.5 years, which recruiters right now, they can hop everywhere, John.
Yeah.
They're going every 2 years because why not, right? It's that much of a demand. So
that's incredible.
That's the overall premise. Yeah, that's the overall premise. There's much more to be said about it. And I'm sure there's any listeners who probably, want to have a vast amount of questions to follow up with that on. But the whole point is that if talent acquisition partners are part of the origin, the conception of the job with the departments that they work with, all the way until new hire kind of intake meetings and acclimation, and they're really involved in that entire length, you have longer retention, you have higher impact, and you have certain things on the cost per hire spectrum. We can talk about that if you'd like to, but there's business impact, like real numbers that are impacted there in this kind of model. And it's been cool to try to test it out in the sandbox over here.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. And I have to admit, like, I love HR. I love lots of different aspects of HR, and, but I have my, the areas that I'm most interested in. And I have to admit that talent acquisition in theory is something I'm passionate about, but in practice, like, I don't think I would ever want to be a recruiter, given the way many organizations set it up. Right?
Yes.
The way you're describing actually sounds like it would be a cool job.
Right.
Because you have more ownership, you're involved in the whole process. That all sounds amazing. And so it's no wonder that you're having such success in terms of retention of really good people. And in hyper growth stage like you're in a really tight labor market, that's a huge challenge, right? You guys wouldn't be able to do what you're doing if you had like a normal retention rate that most organizations have for their recruiters. You'd be in big trouble.
And then that's a common problem, right? The industry, because of the function's failures, right? The function has failed us over time. And if we don't re-architect the job, this is where I feel like a lot of organizations are too slow to rethink their job architecture to maximize satisfaction and impact. If they do that, they have better retention, less turnover. They're able to keep succession planning is not as much of an issue because you're keeping people around, but you still have enough knowledge base that continues to remain. And you just really you have very little stability in recruiting, right? You have people, and that propagates the function being highly transactional instead of strategic, John. It's, if you constantly have churn and turnover in the recruiting industry, recruiters jumping around, making more money to basically act as a solve or a solution for lack of job satisfaction very often. If you have them jumping around all the time, then organizations, it continually diminishes the actual position itself. It diminishes the function, I guess I would say. And I know the industry is automating quite a lot, and that's great. But what does that mean? That means that down the road, you might not have sourcers because you have automated sourcing happening through AI tools. Well, nobody's really kind of thinking ahead for that either. So with this kind of model, if an area is automated away, it doesn't matter because the whole full breadth is you are truly a talent acquisition partner and you are part of organizational development. You're talking about workforce planning with them. And so if one area is automated out, all the better for the business. You're not laying people off or anything like that. So like I said, there's much more to it, but it's as you talked about, people can really like recruiting, but so many people have gone into it and it's full of excitement in a lot of ways. But one common word is a grind, right? Where usually candidates are frustrated with recruiters and usually hiring managers are frustrated. And I consider it a failure of the function over time. So.
Yeah, well, that is super fascinating. Like you said, JD, so much more we could dig into. I do want to be respectful of your time, and I recognize we're about to the end of our time today. So before we close for today, and I'd love to have you back anytime we could dig into this in greater depth. But before we close today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about the work you're doing with Forbes, for example, with SHRM, what you're doing at Bamboo, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Well, thank you, John. I love working with SHRM, and I'm on the board of directors over college relations. And in fact, that's how, for all the listeners out there, that's how John and I met. And it's been great to be involved in being able to help the early HR, the origins of HR, right? The new people in their field, those who are about to hit the job market. It's been great to be able to help them with that. I love being a part of SHRM in general for that. And Utah SHRM in particular is going through quite a lot of innovation and change itself. So it's been really exciting to be a part of when I was asked to be on the board there. One of the things I would say to all your listeners is to maybe, John West over here wrote a great book. And I'm planning on doing the same here pretty soon. But if anyone would like to connect with me, they can always follow me on Twitter or connect with me on LinkedIn. Follow me there. With my Forbes articles, I've just been able to just start scratching the surface, John. There are a lot of other areas to dive into, but those are also to get a start there. People can take a look at that. I've attached it to my LinkedIn profile. And I guess the final point I would say is if anyone is part of your listening group and podcast, I hope all of us are really focusing on the right things continually. I love that we're able to learn from each other through podcasts like this and through other mediums like this. And there's a lot of positive change that we can make in organizations and in a lot of people's lives if we just think differently and if we re-architect new solutions. We can put some things to the side and sandbox other ideas and have a massive impact in our companies and aggregated impact over time. So thanks for having me here, John.
I love it. I love it. So much fun. I do want you back anytime we can continue the conversation. Thanks for joining me. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what JD can do for you. Check out his Forbes stuff. Check out Bamboo HR. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.